is that, as I've said previously, he came empty-handed. I'm not going to go over a discussion over the latest US arms package, but Brian Beletic has done that extremely effectively for the new Atlas. It was meager fare. It's the thinnest arms package that the United States has put together up to now. Frankly, I would have thought that the Ukrainians would be deeply disappointed that this is all that President Biden was able to come up with on a trip to Kiev and to Warsaw, where he made all of those speeches. And of course, it doesn't help the overall credibility of this particular visit that it's now been confirmed that by the United States that not only were the Russians informed in advance that President Biden was intending to visit Kiev over the course of this European visit tour, but that he actually sought permission from the Russians to go, and that the Russians even set conditions on what kind of personnel, what kind of aircraft could be used if President Biden did, in fact, visit Kiev. John Helmer at Dancing with Bears has a good discussion of this. So overall, I thought it was an underwhelming visit. I've noticed that President Biden's speech is already disappearing from the newspapers. It was clearly not the great historic address like the one that, say, President Kennedy made in 1961 in Berlin. It is a speech, or rather a series of speeches, that is forgettable, that broke new ground, but which perhaps by adopting this rather foolish soundbite is creating problems for the future. Now, the contrast again with Putin's speech is remarkable because, of course, Putin's speech was full of facts and figures and discussions about Russia's future. He was discussing, for example, a significant overhaul of the higher education system, the upgrading of the vocational system, which apparently he says is already improving significantly in Russia. He was talking about the strengthening of the Russian economy. He was outlining all sorts of measures about the strengthening of the Russian economy. And he also, it struck me, for the first time, appeared to concede a point which I have made many times in the past, and which my late friend, John Hellervig, perhaps the best commentator of the Russian economy that I can remember, used to make continuously until he passed away, tragically some years ago, that the single thing that's holding the Russian economy back has been the fact that the central bank has been conducting an over-tight monetary policy, draining the economy of liquidity at a time when the finance ministry, the Russian finance ministry, has been insisting on running a budget deficit. Well, Putin, for the first time, appeared to come close to acknowledging that this was the case when he said that in future, with inflation brought under control, interest rates would become softer, lower, and that would enable more credit in the economy, more liquidity in the economy, which would allow the economy finally to start growing faster than it has done. That was an interesting statement, I thought, from him, and we'll see whether the central bank follows up on it. By the way, and in parenthesis, the finance ministry, the Russian finance ministry, says that they anticipate a 2% budget deficit this year. I say that this is, in a way, a sequel to my earlier comments about the deficit in the Russian budget that took place in January. But let's put all that aside. The single thing that came across most interestingly for me from Putin, however, is of how very limited the effect of the sanctions has been on Russia's real economy. He said that the only period in 2022 when the economy, the Russian economy, actually experienced contraction was in the second quarter. In the third and fourth quarters, the economy bounced back into growth, and of course it had grown strongly in the first quarter. So the sanctions created a brief shock, but they weren't the knockout blow that virtually everybody, including many people in Russia, had expected that they would be. Anyway, the two speeches did make, for me, an extraordinary contrast. One speech full of analysis. You might not always agree with the analysis, but there it is, full of policy decisions, full of facts and figures and statistics, full of plans for the future of his country. Much more detailed plans, by the way, than the ones that President Biden discussed in his State of the Union address before Congress a few weeks ago. But anyway, a lot of that in Putin's speech. And as I said, this windy rhetoric coming from President Biden over the course of his trips to Kiev and Warsaw. Well, we shall see how this war ends. We shall see what happens over the next few days and weeks. And this is the point, however, where I stop. It's already been another long video, and there'll be more from me soon. And in the meantime, just to remind you again, you can find all our videos on our various platforms: Locals, Rumble, BitChute, Odyssey, Telegram, and of course Rockfin. And you can support our work if you wish via Patreon and Subscribestar. Links under this video. And you can check out our shop and buy yourselves the great things that you will find there: our magic mugs, our hats, our hoodies, our t-shirts, our sweatshirts, and all of those things. And last but not least, if you have liked this video, please remember to press the like button and to check your subscription to this channel. Thank you for joining me again today. More from me soon.